Hi, it's Richard here from Intelligent Advisor IT Consulting with another in our regular series about the example projects provided with Oracle Policy Modeling. This week we're going to be looking at the Energy Saver example project. The Energy Saver example project, I'll just go over there and select it now. And you can see that amongst its key features, there's value lists, which we'll talk about, and a variety of dynamic elements, dynamic visibility, label visibility, screen visibility, and so on. And we'll take a look at those features. We'll also look at a particularly well thought out rule, which you can use to demonstrate something, as well as looking at different features that you could extend or modify to meet your own requirements. So I'm going to select this and choose copy and replace so that I rub out the existing version that I was playing with earlier on today. And let's begin with a brief walkthrough as to what this project entails. In the Rules tab, you'll see there is only one Word document, so it's not a complex project from the point of view of business rules. And in this Word document, we can see that it is a bunch of energy advice. And indeed, that's the whole goal of the interview, is to provide a person with advice on how to save money or be more energy efficient. You can see that it's divided into sections: air conditioners, heating, lighting, insulation, swimming pools, and so on. Let's take a look at some example rules so you can get a feel for how they're built. The person should be advised on the optimal temperature for an air conditioner if you have an air conditioner, obviously that's a prerequisite to get advice about it, and the temperature of the air conditioner is set to less than 78 degrees. And we follow through with a variety of Boolean rules like that. We have a table to help us select which appliances we need to tell you to turn off, based on what appliances you've told us you have. As we scroll down a little bit further, we come across a really nice rule here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. The person should be advised on saving energy on doors. So this is the functional aspect. We're going to tell you how to save energy on doors. But what really is interesting and is useful from a demonstration perspective is that this is a very nicely structured rule that demonstrates the clever mix of natural language and highly structured rules, which makes Oracle Intelligent Advisor so easy to read and so good with people who aren't technical. So we have an either block and an and block. Let's focus just on the either block for now. We have the initial part of the either, which says, well, you don't have a glass door, or, and then it says the person should be given advice about saving energy on an external glass door. So we're going to focus on this second line because the text underneath, because this is level 1, level 2, level 3, the level 3 text is what is used to essentially prove the line above it. So the person should be given advice about saving energy on an external glass door. If the person has an external glass door and the external glass door doesn't have heavy drapes and the external glass door is not double glazed. So all three of these must be true for you to be given advice about how to save energy on an external glass door. It's a very nicely written rule, and it's a very good demonstration of how easy it is to understand rules. We have another rule here with a level 1 and level 2, and that just about wraps it up for our rules. So clearly, one way to improve, modify or extend this project is to modify the conditions relating to when advice should be given, or indeed introducing a whole new category and inventing your own rules as to how and when people should get advice about it. So I don't think it's very difficult to extend this project. We'll go to the Data tab, and you'll see that the majority of our rules, of our attributes, I beg your pardon, are Booleans, are yes, nos, whether you have a heater, whether you have ceiling fans, whether you have a dishwasher, and so on. 4 temperature attributes, or rather 2 temperature and 2 number of hours per day, And finally, the name of the person and the attribute that we saw in the word table to help us understand which cooling appliance needs to be turned off. What does that tell us about the interview? Well, it tells us that the interview is going to be fairly straightforward in structure because we've got to collect a lot of Boolean attributes to be able to give you advice. We've got to know, for example, do you use energy saver light bulbs? We've got to know whether you have any of the following appliances. If it's appropriate, we need to tell you what temperature, we need to ask you what temperature you set your heater to. So this is the first of 3 screens that has a question mark here, which means they use visibility rules to decide whether to display the screen or not. So if I go to show screen if, you'll notice that it says show if the person has a heater. So this is a good example of a Boolean rule being used to say, well, when this is true, show this screen. And you'll find a similar rule in the next screen and the third in the set. So not all screens will be displayed, and this is obviously a key point when you're demonstrating Oracle Intelligent Advisor, is that there is, of course, logic embedded in the interview to avoid posing unnecessary questions to people. You'll notice here on the doors page that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 Booleans, but the last 2 Booleans have also visibility rules attached. Does the external glass door have heavy drapes? And when we select this question, we'll see that this question is only going to be shown if the person has an external glass door is true. Yeah, so we're going to ask you first, do you have a glass door? And then if you do have one, we're going to show this. In fact, we're going to show both of these attributes. These attributes will disappear if you answer no to the question, does the person have an external glass door? So there's another opportunity to modify the project, or at least extend it, perhaps add another attribute here that is also visibility controlled. And we'll see on the final screen, there are also 2 other visibility controlled attributes in relation to the question, does the person have a swimming pool? On the final page, we have a variety of labels. Each of these are labels. And the labels are all subject to visibility rules. Saving on heating will only be shown if you have a heater, and so on and so on and so on. So there's a large set of labels that may or may not be displayed if you need to modify your appliances. And finally, we have one element on the final page that is always displayed that says, if you want more information, come and talk to us. If we go back to the page that contained information about the heating, we have a question that says, what temperature do you set the heater to? And it's being displayed as a drop-down. Remember that when you have a set of values, you could also display it as a radio button, but you can see that that would be pretty atrocious in this case. Or it could be text buttons, or it could be images, but I don't have any images, or it could be a slider. All of these look pretty terrible in their current situation, so I'm not surprised they chose a drop-down. But when you look at the drop-down and select the values, you'll notice that the values are being shown in a slightly different way to normal. That's because this is coming from a value list. How can I tell it's a value list? It's because visibility rules on individual values are possible only if you're using a value list. So I'm going to go over to Project, to Value Lists, and I'm going to show you the list of values. There they are with the numerical values and then the display text that goes with it. So although this value list is a number, the user gets to see some friendly text. And of course, that makes it very easy if you wanted to add another attribute, such as the temperature of the television. I have a very old television. And I could set the type of the attribute to temperature. And then I could add myself a new screen. And I could add my attribute. And of course, I'd benefit immediately from the values in the dropdown because my attribute was tied to the value list. So the benefit, of course, of our value list is that once you've established it, as I've just shown you, you can use it multiple times, which is different to how lists on screen controls work. Of course, just creating this attribute isn't enough. I would obviously have to come up with some advice if your temperature was too high. So I could go to the Energy Saver rules document again. And I could imagine myself doing something like this. I could say, well, let's do another category. And we'll call this television. And we'll say the person should be advised to switch off the television if the TV temp, and I'll just format these before I go any further. And I'll use the policy modeling ribbon and choose the rule assistant. And we'll do something to do with temperature. The temperature of the television is greater than 68, since the current value list is in Fahrenheit. Of course, to make it clean, I could do something like this. I could say, let's create an intermediate attribute down here. The TV is too hot if, oops. And then I could simply put in here, the TV is too hot, in order to encapsulate the idea of the TV being too hot. Let me change the number later on if I need to. So now that I've created my new little category of rules, I could, of course, return to my interview, return to the final page, and come up with something really interesting to say about televisions in a new label. Make sure you don't watch too much television and burn the TV stand. Something equally ridiculous, and say show if, and it was the it was the television. The person should be advised to switch off the television is true. So now we have added a new item to our interview. We've added a new rule. We've added a new screen, and we've added some further advice. And we leverage the value list. So I'm going to go through this interview now. Say, yes, I use energy saving light bulbs. I have, let's keep it nice and simple. I don't have any of those. I just have a heater. Of course, we could go back and modify that to include a television, as we'll see in just a moment. And you'll notice that when I choose no here, the attributes disappear. I'll go as fast as I can. And you'll notice that when I reach my television page, we don't see it, because I need to add some logic to the screen to ensure that the screen is displayed. So we're going to do that in 2 steps. We're going to create a new Boolean. The person has a television. We're going to add that to the screen that I just mentioned a moment ago, the appliances screen. And we'll say the person has a television, and we'll make it a checkbox. Television, there you go. And we'll return to the television screen, and we'll say show if, I'll find the person has a television is true. So now we can return to our interview, and we'll go to the appliances page, and we'll say we have a television. And now I should be able to just scroll nice and quickly through all of these. And I reach my question about the television, and I'll say that it was 84 degrees Fahrenheit, 29 degrees C, which is pretty hot for television. And when we scroll down, we'll see that we have the advice on telling us not to keep the television on and make sure we don't burn the TV stand. So we've seen 3 really interesting things in this demo. We've seen visibility of screens, visibility of labels. We've also seen value lists, and we've seen a very nice example of a multi-level rule. Of course, there's much more that can be done with this interview. Perhaps one of the biggest things about this interview is that it's so simple and straightforward, but it's on a subject that everybody probably has thought about at one time or another. So you can go ahead and knock yourself out changing the styles, changing the logo, changing the fonts, as well as simply adding new rules and new items, just like I did. I hope you found this useful. See you next time.